Hey, pilot, welcome back to Ready for Pushback. I'm Nick Fialka. Stoked you're here today. Wes Wages is joining me again. He is a repeat customer here on the show, and we are following Wes through his aviation journey. He is a person that has had a career in the past, and this idea and dream of being a professional pilot, it's his second shot at what he really wants to do. And so here we are. It's our third conversation. He just had his instrument check ride, and we'll talk through all the things that happened. It's so fun to talk to Wes. He's an easy conversationalist. He is a really humble guy, and it's nice to talk to him. These are one of the most popular episodes. Every time Wes is on the show, there's a big spike in people that enjoy listening. So I certainly love having him back as much as I can. So anyway, y'all, sit back, relax. Let's get ready for Pushback.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
All right, Wes Wages back again. My man, what's up? How are you?
Dude, I'm good, man. I never know if it's good to kind of come on the podcast with you or bad, because it's always like a big moment for me. But this one's good, you know.
Yeah. Well, for those of you that follow along, this is the third or fourth time Wes has been on the show. And Wes is a person currently in flight training and doing all the things. And so I thought, as I got to know Wes, it would be great having him come back time and time again and give us a status update of what's going on. So if there's a pilot that's considering aviation for a career, especially a second career, this is like some no holds barred stuff here.
Absolutely.
All right, man, last time we talked, you were going to fly out across the country to meet a DPE for an instrument check, right?
Yeah, we had met each other at OBAP.
That's right.
I think we chatted before OBAP. So we finally got to meet in person, and that was an awesome experience.
That's right. And we're both equally tall.
We were both, awkwardly tall.
We are very weirdly tall.
But yeah, after that, I remember being pumped up because we met, and I was like, I got my instrument check literally like 2 days later. So I continued on to finish that up because, I found a DPE that was available, and it was kind of on me to find that person. I find them, and I was excited because I wanted to finally get it done.
And for everybody at home, like, you live in old Nash Vegas. OBAP was in Memphis.
Yep.
And then you found this DPE, I think, in Arkansas?
In Arkansas, yep.
How did you find that DPE in Arkansas?
Funny story. I was getting my what is it? Every 2 years we have to have our transponder and altimeter check, and I was getting that done. While I was at this little airport in Tennessee, there was a citation there, and a friend of mine asked to do a tour of the citation, and just happened to ask the guy there, "Hey, you know any DPEs? We're both looking for a DPE." And he was like, "Yeah, I know a guy." And so that's how it kind of worked out.
Wow.
Which tells you, like, talk to people as much as possible, found him super great to communicate with, which has been tough because finding DPEs, from what I've reached out to a lot, and they were hard to come by.
Yeah.
They weren't available, or they wouldn't respond, or they would say, "Hey, I'm 4 or 5 months out."
Oof.
And it's like, wow, I got to do, and I'm ready for the instrument check now, So I went to Arkansas, did the check ride, and just a little previous story, Nick, like, I started flying when I was 14, got a few hours in, got my private when I was 24 years old, and then basically started a career and a family and didn't fly at all. And now I'm 40. So I started flying again about a year ago.
Man, that's wild.
It was, a long time of not flying, a long time without a check ride.
Yeah.
So definitely had a lot of nerves during that. And yeah, it was tough for me.
Hmm.
And yeah, we can go into as much detail as you
I
want, but
want.
I will just say, number one, the written. I passed the written, but I didn't do so hot on the written. So the DPE covered every single question. So my oral was about 3.5 hours long.
Wow. Give me an
Which
example of like a really tricky one that he gave you.
one of the things we talked about was like, what are the requirements in Class B airspace? And obviously, I said like Mode C transponder. Obviously, we have to have permission to enter Class B airspace. But also for navigation, a VOR is required.
That's right.
And so that's one thing I just didn't know at the moment. So we talked about that. One thing he wanted to make sure this is not a learning session. You know, he's here to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. We did just have a lot of discussion about a lot of things. Of course, I remember the things that I missed, not the things that I got right.
Right. Yeah, that's welcome to
And
being
I wouldn't
human.
say necessarily missed. We just had to dig a little deeper.
Mhm.
Another thing, I had there was the longest METAR I've ever seen. And I really think what he was getting around to was really just saying, well, what can I decipher from this, and what do I know? Because we all get accustomed to ForeFlight, right? Or whatever, like electronic flight book you have, and it's just like you get accustomed to that. So it's good to go back and look at that METAR. There were definitely things I did not know, but it was the longest one I had ever seen.
Yeah, that's funny.
Another one was on RVR,
Yeah.
which for my general aviation world is not as big, but so when we're looking at an approach plate, and you're looking at your minimums, RVR over just the standard altitude and distance there.
So your RVR is you just can't auto land and take it to 0-0. You don't have a HUD.
No, not on the Piper Cherokee. There's no autopilot or anything. And honestly, like I took this check ride, the instrument with like the I will say archaic instruments, the steam gauges and an old 480. But I'm glad I did. It was all hand flying and difficult, but
Just so
I
you
tried it
know,
out.
when you're my first officer and we're flying the 757 together and you come on to final and you disconnect the autopilot, you're going to say autopilot off. And I'm going to say awesome pilot on. And
Boom.
that's how
I
you
mean,
start.
yeah, because like I've never actually I've flown with an autopilot in a 172 like one time, and I have approaching 500 hours just hand flying everything.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I don't know if I have 500 hours of hand flying total. Okay, so you went down there and you had the METARs and you talked about all the things. And 3.5 hours later, it's time to walk to the jet. So talk to me.
A friend of mine had his commercial check ride that morning, so I had the 12 p.m. slot. So that morning, I went and flew with another CFI just to like make sure I got all my maneuvers down and approaches down, and everything went well. Like I hit the needles and everything. The CFI was like, "Yeah, you did great." Also, my CFI back in Nashville signed me off and everything. Said I was doing great. So I felt good about that. So we get done with so it's at 12 p.m., let's say 4 o'clock, finally he's like, okay, let's go fly. It's been so long since a check ride. I didn't realize that was like, hey, you passed the oral. But in the moment, you're just questioning yourself constantly. Like that's what these tests, like, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm passing. I don't think I'm passing. It still didn't know that when I went out to fly. Now in hindsight, I know that we wouldn't have gone and did the practical had I not passed the oral. So that's good for people to know. Well, we went and did the flight. And man, I have a lot of shame with this, but also it's a great learning moment. So I preface that with like, we're all in this together, we're learning, and we can always work forward. But I just botched it, man. I will say, one of the things he said, hey, we're going to get up to altitude 3,000. You're going to contact me. I'll be center. So we get there and we start the check ride. And on the first one, I went 100 feet below mins on the first approach. Man, I have a lot of shame saying this stuff.
It's all right, baby.
Then I was flustered. You know what I mean? I'd flew that morning. I did the, hours of the oral, and I was just exhausted. So I missed the men's on the first one, which as well gave me like, I was like, man, this is not going well on the first approach. Right after that, I went ahead and went missed immediately when I would drop below the DA. And it's been a while, so I may say MDA or DAs, a few things, but like I dropped below the men's. And then I went missed immediately versus going to, this will tell me before going to the runway. And so, he's like, oh, are you going missed here or are you going missed at the runway? And, of course, second guessing it, like, oh, at the runway. A couple things. I never practiced with the foggles on doing the entire missed approach procedure. And that was a red flag because as soon as I hit my altitude, I expected to take the foggles off, which I had practiced, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
With my CFI. And of course, he's like, no, we're just going to fly the missed approach procedure. Makes sense. We just had not practiced it that way. So, went missed and he did unusual attitudes as soon as we went missed. I also had never practiced unusual attitudes spontaneously. So it was always like, hey, let's practice unusual attitudes. Let's look down. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's do this. And so that caught me off guard as well. You know what I mean? Like I missed the first one. I got the second one. I mean, by missed, I still recovered. It just wasn't like gracefully. And so immediately I'm just frazzled. I'm caught off guard. I'm like trying to talk to myself of like, Wes, you got this. Like, but like, I'm like, well, I've already failed this thing, in my mind. Like I was just completely like distraught. Well, then we go to fly the next approach. I load it up and the GPS is acting funny. Like I'm like, and I'm not even gonna say funny. The GPS is acting like the GPS. It's the user who didn't know how to do one thing. And just to kind of briefly talk about this, I was set up for the to do vectors to final, which definitely practice vectors to final. Like that's, the DPE is going to do like, hey, whatever I can do to get all these approaches in where we don't have to go all the way out to the initial. And so they're going to do vectors, which I had not practiced much as well. And so we do that and I'm like, okay, I'm going to click directly to my final approach to kind of load that into this GPS. Well, whenever I clicked direct to the final approach, it kept bringing up the database and not my flight plan. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I've never experienced this. I don't know. Well, turns out on the flight home, I finally figured out there was a button pushed. And more than like, I'm assuming that the DPE probably pushed that button. And they have every right to do that because I think, honestly, that was the thing that I got so frazzled. I actually asked to end the check ride because I was just distraught. I was like, I don't know what's happening with the GPS. And so we flew down and landed and had a great landing, by the way. So and we ended it and I got a disapproval on the practical. But yeah, I think the DPE, if so, I don't know this because I have a feeling that my head was down when the button was pushed. I should know that GPS frontwards and backwards, and I didn't. So that's on me. And so I'm actually pretty thankful for that experience. That one, I got to understand what it was like with a different DPE, but then two, that I was called out on not knowing the GPS completely too. And so I went back and like studied the GPS even more and more and got my approaches down perfectly and how to do vectors to final and everything. So, and it's an older GPS. But that's all on me.
All right. So you're in Arkansas and now you've failed this check ride and you've got to go back home. Talk to me about the experience.
Yeah. Well, one, I'm really thankful I went out there with a friend. And he brought his CFI with him. So if I had gone out there by myself, I would have had to fly home with the feeling of failure. And it was real. Like, I had a lot. I had some other mentors. I had my wife and my kids who have cheered me on so much. And I sit here and dude, I failed this check ride. Like, you guys have done so much for me and worked a lot of hours. And when they call me Papa, like when Papa hasn't been home, you've, like been great, has shown so much grace to me. And I sit here and I failed the check ride. You know what I mean? Like, and so many things are going through your mind. Like, am I even cut out for this? Like, this is not an industry where you just get to like sit back, right? There's many tests. There's so many check rides. You're constantly learning. And there was just so much doubt just playing in my head of like, I don't know if I can do this. If I can't do this practical exam, like, why am I here? And so I did pull the, I'm safe. And so I had to do a check-in with some external factors and say that like, and man, I had to stand there and say, hey guys, would you mind flying the plane home? I'll be safety pilot. But I just feel like it's probably not the safest thing for me to do right now to fly home. So thankfully there was a CFI there and he flew the plane home. And even while we were mid-flight, we were at night and it was a little hazy, so you could barely see the ground. So I was like, guys, would y'all mind if y'all dropped me off at my airport? And y'all kept going. And that was tough to ask because like, I'm a 40-year-old man. I'm older than these guys. You know what I mean? Like, I want to show the leadership ability. I want to show them that like, hey, I can recover from this moment, but dude, it was tough. So I was thankful that in the moment I said, hey guys, I need a little help. You know what I mean? I'm just distraught. I'm exhausted. And I think it's best for me to get on the ground with somebody else. And I'll drive home and then continue.
I know exactly how that feels, especially like the part where you're older and you want to like, everybody thinks, oh man, he's 15 years older than me. That guy's done it all. He's got all the experience and that's the leader or what have you. And they're looking at you. And then, man, it's hard to be in that spot, dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I remember when you texted me or I was texting you and you're like, man, it didn't go so well. And so I called you up and gosh, there was a lot of lowness. And I wanted to encourage you just to take a breath, take a break. And that this is your opportunity, right? That part is behind you. And it's the opportunity to know what to expect that next time. And, I was so upset and Anna was asking, he's like, you all right? I was like, Wes didn't pass his check ride and she got upset. And like, so we're all on the boat with you. And that's how I want you to feel because that is a really hard thing to do.
I appreciate that a lot, Nick. And I will say like, if I learn anything, it's having people in your corner and not doing this whole thing alone, right? There's so many tests, there's so many ups and downs constantly. And so I think just having people that you can reach out to and say, this didn't go well. And that was really tough for me, right? To reach out to all the people and say, hey, I didn't pass this, right?
Yeah.
Because originally I told everybody, hey, check ride is on Sunday. We're going to get this done. And then have to reach out again and say didn't pass. But man, yeah, it was tough. 48 hours. I think the next day I didn't fly, but the next day I got back up and did it again. And I said, hey, let's go figure out what I did wrong.
Okay. When you look back, what do you identify as like things that you could have gotten more prepared for? Like, do you recommend people fly to Arkansas to do check rides? Do you recommend there's a lot of variables that I see.
I don't recommend that because I think that it's added pressure by flying to another location. There's a lot of added pressure because one, you're out there. And then if things don't go well like it did me, then you have to fly yourself back. And I'm so thankful I had somebody else there with me, Number two, do a mock check ride. I didn't do that. Like just go up with another like CFI, CFII, depending on what your rating you're doing. But like you got to do a mock check ride and say, hey, I want you to be brutal with me.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I wish I had done that. But I was like, I think I need to join some type of school.
Talk to me about that part. just paying a guy out of pocket that is a CFII versus the thought of needing to go to some organized schooling?
Since I own my own plane, I have that ability to just hire a CFII who's not a part of any type of organization or school. It was great. I think you can get someone less expensive, possibly. But I do think that schools have some protocols in place, like mocks and a certain type of training that just honestly is going to set you up better if needed. And just for my style of learning, I think that's just going to be best for me. And so that was a recommendation from the DPE that day.
Oh.
And so I took his advice immediately and did that. And so far, it's been great because one, I should say that like I had 60 days to redo the practical. I did it within, I think, like 40 days, passed, and now I'm an instrument rated pilot.
First off, congratulations. Second off, you were so freaking nervous.
For the second one?
Yes.
Yeah,
man, totally. I don't want you to gloss over that. I want you to I don't want to jump 45 days. I want to talk about what you learned and why. Like, yes, I'm so glad that you passed this. Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the differences that you got with this curriculum versus and other than just a mock, like did you have multiple instructors and you got multiple takes? Like what were the things that were helpful?
Yeah. So, and that's where I know I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but one of the reasons is because they had access to DPEs.
Aha.
And that was huge because it wasn't all on me to go find the DPE and schedule everything and do all the communication. Like the CFII at this school, it's Hawkins Academy in Shelbyville, Tennessee. They immediately had like, hey, let's go ahead and get you on the schedule. You have 60 days to do this. So they went ahead and scheduled it.
Oh man, that's so good.
And so all of that was out of my head. I didn't have to worry about it. They told me the date. They said, hey, you're doing it, and you're doing it locally, like within 30, 40 minutes away. So that's why I wanted to jump the gun a little bit and say that was a huge load off of me. As well, I flew with two CFIIs who both signed me off and said, yeah, you got this. Another thing I did is I bought a little, since I have steam gauges, I don't have any type of altimeter bug. So I went on like Airplane Spruce or something like that.
Yeah.
And I bought a little $10 like sticky bug. I got that, and dude, that game changer. So
dude, that is so smart.
Yeah.
Aircraft Spruce, y'all, let's go. That's where I bought.
Yeah. And I thought about things like, okay, Wes, like here's what went wrong. Here's how to fix it. Here's how to make it easier. So the mental load on myself is less. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, I actually am pretty thankful for that disapproval because I became a better pilot, hands down, because I made sure. And now even for my next check rides, like I know what I know and I know how to do this. So it's the mental load on myself is going to be less. And just doing things like that, like, buying the little bugs. So I don't have to sit there and just try to remember this altimeter. Or if the iPad goes down, right, which happens, it overheats or anything, like I have the last assigned altitude already in. So
yeah, that's good. Well, I'll tell you what, the 7.5 is not much different, bro.
Well, I'm prepped for it right now.
I'll text you a picture of this cockpit. It's like,
yeah,
you're like, well, there's like 3 more gauges and it's a Piper. Like it's just,
and just a little bit higher on the ground speed.
I mean, whatever. It's the same thing. This is the thing. You just got to configure early and pull out the speed brakes. I'm
in school with a lot of these 21-year-old, 22-year-olds who are all, glass cockpit, and they've never even been on steam gauges, right? And I know I'm doing things a little different, but it's just like, hey, it is what it is right now. I'm kind of thankful for the process right now and kind of living in the moment and just getting up every day and just doing it again, You
need to tell those kids to listen to this show. That way.
Go to the steam gauges, listen to Nick.
Old Papa Wages over here telling us how to do it. Oh, you know what? One thing you talked to me that you didn't mention here is that when you were taxiing out, you didn't have the airport diagram out.
Yeah, so that was a big one too. I mentioned that. So on the first check ride, he said, I could have failed you because you didn't have your taxi diagram up. And this was, there were 2 runways, but super small field. One of the runways was like 2,500 feet, 50 feet across, I mean, it was a tiny guy. And then like a normal, just, I think it was 4,000, 5,000. And so he says, that could have been a failure because of the taxi diagram. Now, in hindsight, I don't think he would have failed me if that was the only thing that I messed up on. But he said, yes, that was a failure. And so I was like, man, like, I didn't know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this was a small airport that I had actually flown that morning. Like, I wasn't unfamiliar with it. I actually had gone and done practices there too, like a few weeks before. So, and it was just like the single runway, single taxiway mostly. And so, I got back. I was like, that pushes me to do another, like make sure to have the taxi diagram up, no matter size the airport or no matter how familiar you are with it, because those could update.
Oh, yeah.
We always have to look at like even our approach plates. We're having to look and make sure that they're up to date, because what if, the FAA decides to change one thing or close one thing, or if there's a new hotspot. So,
yeah, well, I'll tell you, one of the things I think about, and my airplane's very big, right? When I have my airport diagram up, it actually has like X'd out like red taxiways if my wingtip distance is too long. And so those change, and that's a big deal. If they shut down a taxiway or they're working on something or whatever, and I drag a wingtip over a guy's pouring concrete, like that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then once your weather starts coming down, all like I know you guys don't use SMIGS charts and stuff, but like that's coming next. The low vis taxi mess. It's hard. As the real instrument world steps forward, like slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Like it is as slow as you could possibly go to methodically go through stuff. That's how I found any glimpse of success.
I look forward to that, man.
Dude, yeah, come on, let's go. But this is so valuable because, like, talk to me about the second check ride now. Like, you're jumping in there as a DPE. He knows that this is a rematch. So, how did that feel going into it? How was it different? Talk to me.
We scheduled everything. This is a she. Powerhouse of a woman. She's awesome. And so I basically, they scheduled everything, but I got a call on Monday evening and saying, hey, she can actually fit you in on Wednesday evening. Because of some schedule stuff had changed. It's because we got delayed because of Helene.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the weather just kind of, with all that, we got delayed. So we had to do I had a little bit of anxiety because I'm like, guys, if I don't get this done in 60 days, I have to redo the written. I'm going to redo the written. I'm going to redo the oral. And I was fine doing that. I told myself, I have a mentor who was like, hey, just redo that stuff, get back up and do it again. And I was cool with that, but I really didn't want to have to.
Yeah.
So I got the call Monday evening. Hey, let's do this on Wednesday evening. I was like, guys, this is my kids' fall break. Actually, I didn't tell them this. This is what I internally was thinking. We had scheduled a trip down to Georgia. You know what I mean? Yeah. And LaGrange, Georgia, down there. Oh. And so we had scheduled this trip.
Going to the Great Wolf Lodge.
The Great Wolf Lodge.
I've been there.
We had like taking 4 young kids to a water park during fall break. Great. It was super busy too.
I know.
So I had to ask my wife. I'm like, I feel a lot of guilt in asking for this, but they wanted to do this check ride in the middle of our vacation. So that means I have to leave you with 4 kids by yourself at a water park. Mm. And again, wife steps up and she's like, let's get it done. Let's do it. Like, you got this. I got them. Let's get it done.
Can I just say, the last time I went to Great Wolf Lodge, Anna broke her hand on the way to the lodge, and it was the weekend. So nothing was, the urgent care like wrapped her up. And so I had all 5 kids.
Oh my gosh.
At the Great Wolf Lodge. So I can feel your wife's pain. I understand.
Yeah. Plus 1 there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's just a lot to keep up with, right?
Yeah, it's so
There's nothing that has prepared me for flying airplanes more than being a dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like in the chaos and everything that happens. So, I fly 2 of the kids down there to LaGrange, and we hang out at the water park for the day. And then my wife has to drive, what's an hour? It was an hour and 30 minutes for me flying, and then took her like 5 hours or something, we just don't have that big of a plane yet. And then so we did that. The next day I get up, I fly back to Nashville. I go up with the CFI to do all the touch points, maneuvers, do all that, spend a couple hours flying. So I'd already flown through 2 hours and then another 2 hours with him. So I had a little anxiety of like, Wes, don't overexert yourself because you have this check ride. We can't do a failure on this. Like, you got to get it, But yeah, flew in and picked her up. We went up and did the whole had to do everything on the practical again.
Did you do the missed approach with foggles on?
Oh yeah. I would say, I think, 95% of the flight was with foggles on, and until we did break out one time and did a circle to land. But yeah, it was all under foggles. So of course, all of these things that I learned from the first check ride, I knew I was prepared for. And yeah, I think I aced that. And I had aced some of those other ones before, but like I knew the GPS, I knew vectors of final, I knew how to get out of the database and go straight to the flight plan. Unusual attitudes. Honestly, I think she even tried to get me, she told me to like look down at the iPad, which is exactly what the first DPE did.
Sneak.
But this one, she asked me to close my eyes completely. And then I was still in a climbing right turn on the mist. And so like it took a minute for me to get off that, you know what I mean? But of course, like you're flying blind, you're going to get off course and with no autopilot or anything. So, as soon as I looked up, just recovered and felt good. And yeah, of course, there's going to be anxiety and nervousness going into it, but I'd done what I could. I knew all the things I needed to. I have the ACS. There are differences in DPEs. She made it feel way more like a conversation versus maybe asking me a question and being silent, which is tough for anybody. So of course we talked, you know what I mean? And that was awesome. It felt just a little less intimidating. And of course, I had to hit everything to the ACS standards. And I did. As soon as we got back, we landed and, she's like, well, are you ready for the check ride to be done? And I had turned the master off and everything. And I was like, and I'm just like questioning myself in that moment, like, oh gosh, like, yes, ma'am, like ready for this. And she's like, well, you probably need to turn the mags off. So I turned the mags off and got the key out, and she was like, okay, you passed, I was like, oh man. So yeah, it felt good. And then, so dropped her off, went and took the CFI, and the CFII came with me. And honestly, I think that was just good in hindsight, just to have them there. And you just don't know what you don't know, but like, I didn't know the first time that would be a good idea. It just felt good for them. And then also I know that like going through the school setting, that DPE is putting a lot of pressure on the CFII as well. So I think if they have a relationship, then basically, I think like, hey, you're signing this person off. So, I trust you and that you've gone over all these things. And of course she made sure that I did, but like, it just felt like a lot better versus going super cold into a DPE who neither of us knew or anything. So that was just having that relationship, I think, is key. So.
Yeah, I agree. A couple things I think about with that when in the Navy, when we do check rides and we do training students how to do whatever it is, when they get signed off to go to the check ride, every time there's a conversation between the guy that's doing the check ride and the instructor that signed him off. And we have a years long relationship already. So, also, if you're flying with me, I'm not signing nothing unless you're 110% going to pass.
I had another guy, like a friend who works for Envoy, and he was like, "What? Like you were signed off when you weren't 110%?" And I said, "Well, as the pilot, I thought I was signed off with 110%. You know what I mean? But like, I realized pretty quickly during that practical that I was not ready."
Yeah, getting some scrutiny. It was probably pretty eye-opening getting some scrutiny from the instructors at the organized flight school as you started going. So it's good. And I'm glad you stayed motivated because man, you were so low when I talked to you and
Yeah.
just really just in a bad spot. And I'm so thankful that you just, listen to yourself, go 110% again and just make it all happen. And the fact that you were successful, it's a great opportunity. Now you got a good interview question to answer, right? Like, tell me about a time you failed. It's going to
Yeah.
be great. That's all these avenues are, and the fact that now it's recorded so you can come back before your interview and listen to it and think about all the things because it'll be in the future
Yeah.
and you'll think, man, I forgot about that and I forgot about that.
Yeah. Nobody wants a failure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, and it's a really, it hits the ego pretty tough. But I know my goal and I know my dream, and I'm like, okay, well, if I still want that, I'm not out of this game. Just with a failure, you're not out of this. In being transparent in this, Nick, I can't tell you how many people told me about some failures that they had that would have never come up in conversation because there's a stroke to the ego, right? But like, so people just don't want to mention it. I am pretty transparent, so I mean, it's just going to happen for me. But like, um, so many people, I've heard multiple like two failures. You know what I mean?
Dude,
And they
I
got back up, and they're still going. And like, they didn't go get a job at the manufacturing plant the next day.
yeah, where I grew up, it was the hosiery mill or the chicken farm. I speak to the people with 5, 6, 7 failures. I speak to the people that very, very few people I talk to, even if you don't have a failure flying, there's another failure in life that they didn't snuff up to. And
Yeah.
but that's the important part, is knowing that you are good enough to succeed. You can do it. Let's reassess, reimagine how we're going to go through the process and do it again. And
Yeah.
those reps are the things that make you a successful pilot, because you're gonna have failures in the flight, like actual, it's just gonna be you, and you're gonna mess something up and you're gonna need to recover that. And if you can recover and be safe, then you'll learn from it. I think about that all the time. I think about, to this day, if I do a go around, I did a solo episode not too long ago about a go around I did on a VFR day. And
Yeah.
I took 230 people with me all the way around the pattern in Atlanta on a beautiful, beautiful day. And
Did you stand up at the end of that flight and like greet everyone as they got
it
off?
was humiliating. It was so
Dude.
humiliating. What's
Yeah.
wrong? What happened? What happened? I was like, sorry, man. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What I really wanted to say was like, you think you could have done it? But no,
I know.
I didn't say that.
Nope.
But I took my licks, 230, and like a lot of people were empathetic and nice, and a lot were not. And that just,
Yeah.
it's usually the old man. It's usually like the 80-year-old man that just gives me gruff. He's
Yeah.
probably a Blue Angel though. So
Flying coach in the back. Yeah.
that's right. Hey man, life, it is what it is. And so you're going to have,
Yeah.
and so it's hard to go home and tell your family you failed. It's hard to tell your mentors you failed. It's hard to stand up there and look at passengers in the eye when it's the hard time. And so you're just building, you're building that, that thick skin and resilience that you have to have as a pilot. And I love that.
Yeah.
I would also say next time, give me a shout. We'll meet you down in LaGrange and go to the Great Wolf Lodge.
I know, because you had to do the triple thunder there.
Yeah.
My boys are just like, oh, what about? They asked somebody else who went to like Great Wolf Lodge in California. Like, oh, have you been on the Triple Thunder? I'm like, well, buddy, they probably don't have the same names everywhere, you know?
I don't even know. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, but I mean, I love that, Nick. Those are the moments throughout our careers and lives that, like, I can tell you this: you're not going to find me definitely on a check ride or anytime not having a taxi diagram pulled up when I'm departing.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I was flying out of Niagara Falls International, and I mean, new airport. You know, it was a class Delta, but there's a lot of taxi closures and everything. It was a little difficult, and the taxi diagram was not labeled the same as what the airport was.
Oh.
And I was just like, ooh, red flag. Hey, I've done this. I've been here before. I'm going to just make sure that I know that ground, like, we're just going to listen to ground and ask any questions. And so that just made me understand, like, cool, having that taxi diagram up and just doing that, like, little lessons here and there, they're going to make me a better pilot in the future. You know?
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good, man. All right. So what's the next step? Where do we stand?
Dude, I started commercial yesterday.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How you got the check ride scheduled yet?
I do not. I need to. That's my next thing, and I'm studying for the written. So I think once I get the written done, I'll go straight to schedule the check ride.
All right. It's a lot of studying.
That's let's bring in another thing. We're talking about kids and stuff like that. You know, right? I'm working actually a full-time job right now, video production, like doing that full time. Yeah.
Also, hold up. If you're not on YouTube right now, go over to YouTube and look how good his setup is. It's like so good.
This is my wife's little setup, but yeah, it's fun. So I do that full time, and the 4 kids in the family, and flying right now. And it's tough sometimes because I talk to these students who are like, they're full time flying right now, and they're like, man, it's exhausting. Like, I'm just trying to get all this done.
Give me a break.
I don't say anything. You're just kind of like, I know it, dude. It is, man. Just empathize as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot to kind of do all of these things.
Well,
but I'm thankful for it.
Well, you have your family, you have this job, and you have flying. Like, how do you manage that?
It's tough. I told a friend yesterday that I feel like I'm, 30% in to home life, 30% into the job, and 30% into flying. Mm. Like, it's tough, but
is it sustainable?
I wouldn't say for the long run. I mean, one, I have a family that is very, they're showing me a lot of grace, and I'm trying to show up in the little moments and be present, not, just on my phone or anything like that while I'm with the family. Like, I'm just showing up and being present in front of them. With the job, man, dude, I don't get back to emails as quick as I should. It's just, but I have to also understand that, like, my goal is to be a professional pilot. And so I'm going to do as much as I possibly can to make money for the family. Right. But I'm just not knocking myself so much if I can't respond within 12 hours, 24 hours. Like, I'm just doing the best I possibly can. And then with flying, that's my forte right now. I'm trying to be the best I possibly can in that. And so if anything, I'm probably pushing a little bit more percentage towards that, in the family. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, clients I'm having to work some all-nighters right now, getting back some videos for some clients.
That's the great balance, man. It's just finding your way through. Like, you've made this decision, you've invested a ton of money into it. And so just go with it and see where it goes.
But I'm excited. I'm also trying to do a lot of networking as well. I hopefully hit 500 hours this next month. I'll hit 500. But I don't want to be at 1,500 saying, hey, who do you guys know who I can talk to? All
right, man. So how many hours do you have now?
So I've gotten about 360 or 70 this year.
Wow.
And we're looking at, basically in the first 10 months. I'm sitting at 450.
All right.
Hopefully next month we'll be get to the 500 at least. And so that feels good to be a third of the way.
Yeah.
But man, what's frustrating is when people ask you, like, oh, hey, you done with that pilot thing yet? You're like, you flying for the airlines?
Yeah, no, they don't get it.
I'm just like, every time I'm just like, no, it's going to be years, buddy.
Nobody asked the guy that just graduated from college how being a doctor's going,
Yeah, they know. Like this is a long process, but with this world, they just have no idea.
Yeah,
Um,
it is a super opaque thing. So
yep.
that's for sure.
But one thing I'm not doing, Nick, is like sitting and not networking. Like even with 450 hours, like volunteering with OBAP, that was
Yeah.
awesome, dude. Like I met great people. I met the director of hiring at FedEx.
Oh, Anthony. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
And
awesome.
what's a funny story about Anthony? And then I think I could probably bring this up to him again. I denied him access to his own event because he didn't have his badge on. And because I was told, hey, anybody without the badge, you're not letting them in. Well,
Oh
Anthony comes.
man.
I didn't know who Anthony was. I said, sir, sorry, you can't come into this room. He's like, you're doing your job. I appreciate you. He's like, but I am the director of hiring here. And so I just made sure with my volunteer coordinator, I was like, hey, he's good. She's like, oh yeah. I was like, sorry.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
but that's the kind of stuff. Like I went to him at the end of the event and just say, hey, Anthony, like, just so you know, I was the guy that denied you, but I just want to say thank you so much for kind of all you guys are doing for this event and everything. And that was a good little story. He's like, well, man, reach out to me. Let's
Listen,
we reached out on LinkedIn.
I'm telling you what, if for those of you that don't know Anthony Glenn, he is one of the most marvelous people on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And he is also OBAP royalty. Like his story is amazing. His family's story is amazing. One day soon I want to have him on the show. I love Anthony Glenn so much. So much. It's so funny to I love that you had that experience. That's so good, dude.
Well, and it's just that, I met with Nicholas Air, CEO, last week. And it's just putting these little plugs in. Hey, I know I'm not there yet. I know I'm not there yet. But just to let you know, here's my trajectory.
Yeah.
And I'm serious about this. You know what I mean? So I don't want to be at 1,500 and then asking the questions of, hey, guys, who should I meet? Who should I talk to?
Yeah.
I'm going to do that early.
That's just it. And that's the thing. A lot of people listen to the show and a lot of people hear the networking call, but a lot of people get discouraged when they go to an event, they go to a function. I recently got back from RTAG, the Rotary to Air Group, the helicopter and veteran meetup, and it was awesome. But there were a lot of people there who, oh, nobody's hiring. Oh, nobody's hiring. Oh, nobody's hiring. And they're missing that opportunity to know that even though they're not hiring right now, like FedEx isn't hiring. Anthony Glenn is not going to hire you, but he is an awesome person to have in your contact list to have as a mentor that has gone through the hard parts of this career and has great opportunities to help mentor and share and make you better. And all of that comes around. All of that comes around. And so taking advantage of that is, that's chess while everybody else is playing checkers, dude. Like that's where the win is.
Well, dude, that and this podcast, Ready for Pushback's been like, I've been listening since day one. So and it's
me too.
You know what I mean? You have to. But it's been huge. So I would just say, listen to this podcast. What is it? 121.5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's there's a lot of other pilot. Those are my two right there.
Yeah.
But like, there's so many good ones out there that you can just learn from and inundate yourself. And it's just like, I want to know. I've learned a lot from these podcasts of just listening and getting little tidbits here so that I can even have conversations later.
Yeah, it makes you smart on the bigger picture, whether it's GA flying or corporate flying or 121 flying, and that there's a spot for all of that. And so the more you can expand your brain, the better it's going to be. So
yeah, absolutely.
Dude, I appreciate you coming on the show. I can't wait to have you back to talk about your commercial. And the first look and first pass, like that's how it's going to be.
Dude, well, I know that's going to be like, I'm going to make sure to do plenty of mocks. You know what I mean? Make sure that, like, hey, don't sign me off. And another thing I will say that another guy told me is like, you're paying this school or this CFII to own your future right now. Like you're paying them. So make sure that they know that, say, hey guys, if I fail, this is on you.
Yeah.
granted that I did everything that I was supposed to, and I wasn't surprised by anything on the failure, right? But like, hey, don't let me go to this check ride not being 110% ready for everything that they're going to throw at me.
Yep, that's it.
Just don't do it. Just don't go. And that's, big part of it.
That's what you're paying for, dude.
Yeah.
Well, dude, good job overcoming your obstacles, moving forward. I love it. You've got a lot of inertia now, dude. Just keep going. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Dude, appreciate you, Nick. Thanks so much, man.
All right, pilots, that's a wrap on this episode, and I know what you're thinking. You need to make yourself a little bit better. So how do you make yourself a little bit better? You tighten up your resume. So here's what I want you to do. Go over to my website, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and you can download my free resume template. It is tight, organized, and it's the perfect pilot resume. It's just something I like to do for the pilot group, and it is free to you. So go over there, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and download your free resume template. While you're over there, look at all the services that we offer. Lots of great interview prep, lots of great application review. Everything you need to be a professional pilot is right there. spitfireelite.com/podcast. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next episode.